This is You've Already Been Hacked, recorded on May 23rd, 2025. Welcome back to You've Already Been Hacked. This week, we're going to explore the evolving landscape of cybersecurity threats and strategies needed to combat them, from the boardroom to the maritime sector, some AI, and some quantum computing, and maybe a little regulatory stuff by the time we get to the end. As always, I am your professor of CyberRisk, and with me is the Cyber Cowboy. Hello, Cowboy.
Hello, Professor. I'm ready to rock and roll.
As we take everybody into this holiday weekend. All right, so let's do it. Our top story tonight, the boardroom's role in cybersecurity, proactive measures for modern threats. A recent study reveals that only about 40% of companies have an active board involvement in cybersecurity matters, despite 60% experiencing cyber attacks. Experts emphasize the need for boards to take on a more hands-on approach, including regulatory reviewing of security strategies and aligning them with organizational goals. Cybersecurity advisor John Smith notes an engaged board can mean the difference between containing an attack and suffering severe consequences. The study highlights that companies with proactive boards experience 30% fewer breaches on average. Cowboy, this is something that you and I have talked about together. I'm sure you've talked about it in the industry. I know I've preached on this when I was teaching. The board actually, your C-suite, call it your board, whatever. The top level has to be involved in a meaningful way. They can't just be signatories on what's going on. They have to actually have valid and real input. And the data, this study, shows that input is missing most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a fine line between, obviously, you're going to trust your CISO, right, to do a good job. But at the same time, yes, things that you and I have taught, there's always a section on how to brief the C-suite or the board members, right? When you got to go up and tell the boss of the bosses what is going on, how they need to posture, maybe change strategy, maybe change funding, maybe it's a supply chain issue, right? But agree, they've got to be involved to make those decisions, because not all those decisions will rest with the CISO, and you can't have that blind hands-on.
Well, yeah,
trust.
right. There's that. There's the like you said, the CISO, the CIO is obviously involved. The COO, the CEO, they all have a part to play when it comes to cybersecurity. From a hands-on and proactive approach, one thing that I see is left out often, and there's a logical reason why. I'm not saying it's an absolute negative, but there has to be a way I think that we can fit them in, isn't to, at a minimum, tabletopping. These are the executive officers of the company that are going to have to make decisions on the fly in a real event, potentially, right? Depending on the severity. They should be involved in some of the wargaming that companies do and prepare with, so that everybody knows kind of what the flow of what's going to happen from the top down, right? Who reports to who, in what matter, who's going to convey what information, all that stuff. And a lot of times the C-suite or the board are not included in the tabletop. And that I think could be something that would be a worthwhile change.
Yeah, I'd love to see, a SOC analyst run into the board meeting and be like, exercise, major cyber event. What are you going to do, right? They're probably not used to that type of response need.
Yeah, and I get it. They're busy. They have super quote unquote important things to do, but this is one of those important things. Now, maybe it's not random. Maybe they know. That's why I also say maybe not an active exercise, maybe a tabletop, right? Where their time is obligated for it, because otherwise you don't know what you're interrupting. But the point is not lost. I think we both agree they need to be involved in planning and exercising, not just in the, okay, well, I expect my experts and CISO, you got this, right? Like, that cannot be the behavior that people have moving forward.
Yeah, you're in a leadership position for a reason, right? Nobody else operates that way. The DoD certainly does it. The DoD is a shining example of utmost trust and delegation in leadership, but they're also involved at all levels, right? The generals are involved. They know what's going on. They're driving strategy. They're driving uh, the exercising, all of it. And it really shouldn't be any different in the commercial world, especially around cyber. Because, like you said, it's a CFO, right? It's all it impacts everybody.
What the numbers though, like just to go back to the stats real quick before we hit the next story, right? So 40% of companies have active board involvement. Kudos to those 40%. That's good. 60% of companies are having cyber attacks of some severity. I would argue the number is probably higher than that, and the other 40% just don't know it. Um, and then the 30 those that have an active board have 30% fewer. This says fewer breaches. I don't think that's really the right term that I would go with. Fewer successful attacks is what I would say, right? Because I would say 100% are having cyber attacks. And out of everyone that's having a cyber attack, the 40% that have an active board are are able to mitigate things 30% better than everybody else. That's the way I would interpret that. What do you think?
Yeah, no, they're not. That we don't want to give the impression that they're outright stopping these things. It's just, yeah, it's minimal effect to the business, right? Minimal downtime, no data leakage. Somebody gets in, they always get in, right? That's why you have zero trust and defense in depth and everything else, but significantly mitigated compared to the others.
Totally, totally. Okay. Let's move on to our next story. Maritime cybersecurity, a call for collaboration across industries. The maritime industry is facing significant cyber threats, with 80% of ship owners experiencing an attack in the past 3 years. This goes right hand in hand with our top story. The average cost per incident is $3.1 million. And phishing, PH, since we're talking shipping, should be clear for everybody, remains the primary attack vector, with it being 91% of known breaches, right? So that we're being clear. Smart Sea advocates for collaboration between shipping companies, insurers, and cybersecurity providers to enhance threat response and adopt a secure by design technology stack. They emphasize the need for real-time intelligence sharing and insurance models that reward genuine cyber maturity. There is so much that we can unpack with this. So one, 3.1 million per hit. I don't have the numbers of how many were hit. We have the percentage, but I don't have the number. I think that would be a telling stat if we had that. 80% hit in the last 3 years. Phishing, PH, 91% of the breaches. Still today in 2025, phishing is that successful. And we're not even talking about with AI crafting, right? I'm sure that's helping to keep it up, and that's going to be a severe problem much sooner than not. But 91%, right? Insurance companies over time, and I don't have the actuary in front of me, but I know that at least up to a couple years ago, they were just blanket saying, how much is the company worth? What's their revenue? We're going to just do a percentage on loss and we're going to call it a day. There was no, they couldn't articulate the risk profile for cyber. So the fact that this company, Smartsea, wants to get insurance companies on board with incentivizing cyber maturity, yeah, that's great. But from where I sit, is the insurance industry educated enough and well positioned enough to even give a real raw number of what a cyber event should be insured at, so that they could reward cyber maturity in an effective way?
The answer
Way,
is they're
way so
not.
much. Oh no, I that's what I'm
Yeah,
getting at, dude. Like
yeah.
this is like this is chicken, egg, cart, horse, kettle, black. This is all the things all wrapped into one.
Yeah, that's why a couple years ago, a couple of us joked about starting our own company whose sole job was to provide the cyber risk assessment for insurance companies to insure these, because that doesn't exist, and the insurance companies are not postured to handle that. And you're right, there's so much to unpack here. I love this story. A couple of weeks ago, on one of our shows, we talked about the impact to cyber and docs, right, and the unloading of cargo ships. And now we've gone to the left, and now we're talking about how this could impact actual maritime shipping, the delays, the damage and destruction it could cause. If you think back to the MV Dolly running into the bridge of Baltimore, not cyber related, just to be clear. However, a cyber attack could easily cause a power outage, GPS spoofing, taking over of controls, any manner of thing to turn a massive cargo ship into a weapon with devastating effects. The automated identification system, AIS, that commercial shipping uses, that is their version of, uh, oh, now it just escaped me, what aircraft use. They're beaconing this as this is who I am, right? I'm a
Oh,
U.S. cargo
IFF.
ship.
They're
Yeah, yeah,
identify friend or foe.
yeah, pretty much, right? It gives your location, identity, all that kind of stuff. And guess what? It's not encrypted because uh, forever ago when it was created, it was not thought about who would take advantage of this thing. So you've got everything from spoofing, right? AIS spoofing, but again, doing an attack on a maritime ship to cause supply chain issues, to cause cargo delays, or to create these things into a weapon. And you look at a couple examples of this, right? So we know there's spoofing. In 2024, the U.S. Coast Guard reported that they responded to 36 cyber incidents taking place just within their systems, right? And this is military-ish type of protection, right? Um, you have uh, the oil tanker Eagle S, which is believed to be part of the Russian shadow fleet, causing disruption to underlying internet cables by dragging its anchor, right? You have, in a report released in October of 2024 by Marlink Security Operations Center, a sharp increase was noted in malware detections on vessels. Based on data from 1,800 actively monitored vessels, significant rise from ransomware to evolving botnets. So these botnets are getting on ships and increasing that network. And so this is just another area that I think we haven't seen what I would consider like a mainstream disruption, but unfortunately, I'm worried that it's trending there.
Totally agree with you that it's just another place that critical infrastructure is being looked at from an attack vector perspective, where maybe it wasn't 10 years ago, at least not to the degree it is today. So yeah, I think it's yet just another target that's now shown itself to have the vulnerability. It's good that there are people now looking at things and want to bring it together, but the complexity is really the issue. So yeah, there's so much going on there. I'm sure maritime is an issue that's going to come up more and more as we continue down the podcast road. Okay, let's hit the next one. So this is a little positive. Cybersecurity job growth. We're not hearing too much about job growth in our industry right now, given our current economic outlook, but this is good. Opportunities in emerging hubs. While the major tech hubs like San Francisco still dominate the cybersecurity landscape, there are some emerging cities such as Austin and Raleigh offering promising opportunities. I would argue San Antonio could be thrown into that as well. These cities provide a mix of job availability, higher salary, and a lower cost of living. And according to a report by CSO Online, Austin boasts a 22% year-over-year growth in cybersecurity roles, while Raleigh has offered strong research-focused positions with competitive benefits. This is a good thing, right? This is a lot of this is migration of cost of living and where businesses think they can find more advantageous situations, but that just means that there's still places where you can grow and prosper in this environment, in our economic climate, in our industry. This is all positive from where I see it.
There is, and if you love traffic, move to Austin and get one of those jobs because wow, is it bad because of the explosive growth they've seen over the last 10 years. the road infrastructure can't keep up. And you're right, San Antonio has publicly stated they want to be the cyber capital of Texas, and they're postured well with a majority of the Air Force cyber heavyweights there in the Lackland, San Antonio area. So it is good to hear. Uh, Unfortunately, I say this in jest, so let me get through it. Like,
Sure.
unfortunately, the amount of jobs in cybersecurity has never been the issue. It's always we don't have enough people to fill the jobs. So that's why we sometimes harp on the education and pushing the younger generation towards cyber, because there's a lot of good jobs, good paying, good cost of living
Well,
areas.
let's pause on that. Yes, there's good jobs. Yes, there is a vacuum in people able to fulfill some of those jobs. But part of the problem, and you hit on this either last week or the week before, is the entry level position is not an entry level position anymore in cybersecurity, right? They
Yes.
what well, and that's not to say that the work is not entry level. That's not what I mean. What I mean is companies are looking for senior people or senior type level experience for entry level positions. And that can't be. You have to have an environment where you have the ability for people to grow. Yes, it's a zero sum game. Yes, it's an important mission. Yes, all of the things that you could say to caveat all of it. Fine. If you can't hire junior people to do junior roles inside of an industry, you're never going to grow people to be the experts you need in critical roles. It just the math doesn't work. Sorry, I got a little heated. I apologize.
No, I mean you're spot on with that, right? And yeah, we talked about it the other day, and we talked about it with the AI replacement of entry level positions, right?
Right.
You can set up an effective and efficient way of doing SOC type of business and still have entry level positions doing good entry level work with mid level supervision and providing the experience and mentorship and guidance to grow them in the career. Um, you can't expect to hire a mid level person right out of college, right? You
No,
just
not
can't.
at all. And I look, I am not one to say that we shouldn't use every tool in the toolkit to uplift the environment, right? So if AI can do a lot of the grunt manual labor that we would have normally had or previously had, not normally, previously had entry level people doing, fine, shift their focus. That's what they're there for, right? You don't have to have them turning a crank one way now. You could have them actually starting to do the initial triage of event response as opposed to having to even just dig through the data in the first place. Let machines do the digging, right? I know that sounds very esoteric, and please, our AI overlords, don't hate me when you become sentient, but there are ways to shift what the expectation of an entry level person is without shifting the experience level of an entry level person. That's the problem. But going back to the positive part of this, rather than getting off my soapbox of like we're setting the stack for failure, because that's not what this story is about. The fact that industry is moving into other areas and there is significant growth in those areas, and they're seeing that and it's working, that's a good thing. That and maybe that's where more industry needs to look. Maybe there's more opportunity space in markets that are otherwise not as developed in the cybersecurity industry for companies to fill that vacuum, for new companies to fill that vacuum, niche, small, medium-sized businesses, not just your monoliths, right? Maybe that's a place where your entry-level experience could migrate to. I don't know.
And you want to save costs. I mean, you can do a lot of this work remotely and still be secure. And so maybe you're hubbed in San Francisco, but it doesn't mean that your defensive cyber operations expertise and or SOC can't reside in a lower cost of living area where you can pay someone $20,000 less a year, but because of the area of the country they live in and the cost of living, it's still good money, and they're doing well, and so you still save costs, get the expertise, you check all the boxes. Stop thinking everything has to be in your one hub location in these high cost areas.
It's much easier for bosses to control what they can see. Now, that's the boss side. The flip side of that, without harping on too much, is honestly, employees need to not take advantage of being remote. You're just because you are, you're at home or you're at a satellite place, that the office shop. You're working from a coffee shop if you can. Like, I don't care where you are. If you're remote, you're remote. But if you're remote and working, you should be working. You shouldn't be clocking time and going to get coffee for 2 hours and not doing anything with it, right? And I think a lot of bosses have seen a lot of abuse in that environment, and that's why a lot of RTO is happening. Whether or not the right places are handling it the right way, that is another debate altogether. But I think that that's a knee jerk reaction to, well, I don't know that they're not abusing that. And if your employees are abusing a remote opportunity, the question, there's two questions to ask. One, are you hiring the right type of people? And two, have you created a work culture environment that wants to keep people engaged regardless of where they are? And if you can't answer yes to both of those questions, then that's a problem for you, leader, to fix. It is not necessarily because people are inherently untrustworthy or whatever you want to call for a point on that one.
Facts.
All right, next one. The hidden threat of adversarial artificial intelligence and cybersecurity.
Dun, dun, dun.
Adversarial AI exploits, model vulnerabilities, and often evading traditional detection methods. This is going to be a bigger problem every day moving forward. Attacks like these can manipulate inputs to mislead AI systems, posing significant risk to security systems and data integrity. And defense strategies for this type of concern include adversarial training, model validation, and continuous monitoring for unusual behavior. And this is the exact type of stuff I have put into one of the classes I have recently constructed on AI. Um, it's not these language models that we're using for we'll say generative AI, because I think that's what everyone's used to, your GPTs, your co-pilots, your whatevers, right? It's they have the knowledge now. These models are large enough that they can produce just about anything, um, digital, with a level of high quality, depending on the model. That doesn't mean that what they're going to produce is inherently for good. It can now produce things that are inherently for bad, to include exploiting another model or exploiting a vulnerability in that model, or your entire SOC may not know anything happens because somebody was able to do OSINT on your company and your SOC infrastructure was out there, and they fed that into an LLM, and now that LLM can create every possible offensive measure against you to be successful, and you would never know it. So yeah, uh, all of this upskilling has to happen, and if you're doing cybersecurity evaluations, cybersecurity training, you better be looking at adversarial AI at this point.
Yeah, it's offense versus defense, right? Both sides change based on what the other is doing. And so, as you said, AI for good, AI for evil. Now we have to understand that chess game, right? And not only train the models, but going back to the workforce, train the workforce to understand how to interact and how to see what's going to become intricate, hidden details that these AI models are able to do. Like you said, they know the network, they know the defenses you're using, right? They know how to get around maybe some of that stuff that doesn't necessarily pop off as behavioral anomalies, but if you dig down deep enough, you could potentially see it. So the work these entry level folks could be doing is taking a step back and saying, okay, we've got, call it standard, typical day to day behavioral analysis down. What's the weird stuff? What's next? What's the behavioral anomalies that maybe don't trip the bell alarms?
Yeah,
Let's think at the next level.
absolutely. Won't dig into this as a story. We'll just call this a footnote on this other one. The U.S. National Security Agency has issued guidance on securing AI systems. They have done this in concert with the Five Eyes. That includes Australia, New Zealand, the UK. Don't have data that Canada was involved, but I'm sure they were. It's a jointly released guidance to protect AI systems from data security risks. The document addresses three key areas: data supply chain integrity, malicious data injection, and data drift. Best practices include using digital signatures, tracking provenance, and leveraging trusted infrastructure. And this all goes right back into what we were just talking about, which is you have to prepare your systems for adversarial like activity, most likely from another adversarial or offensively facing AI to you. So if you haven't gone out to see this document yet, please do. It'll likely be on the US's National Security Agency website or your various other New Zealand, Australia, UK equivalents sites. That's where I would go. Cowboy, we're gonna skip down to 6 in the notes here. I'm just trying to keep us crisp for the week. Preparedness for the quantum cybersecurity frontier. So it's not just enough that we have to deal with AI. Now we're going to have to deal with quantum computing. It's finally upon us. So quantum computers pose a significant threat to the current encryption methods, potentially breaking secure systems within the next decade. I would argue maybe sooner. Experts warn that unprepared organizations risk losing data and intellectual property, and the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, is leading efforts to develop quantum-resistant algorithms and improve cybersecurity practices. So just for everyone's edification, real quick, a quantum computer, without getting into the super technobabble of it, basically can tell any bit, whether it is a 1 or a 0, at any given point, at any moment. It sees everything at once, essentially. There's some black magic, black box stuff that happens there. We don't need to get into that now. Maybe that'll be a long discussion for something else. But a quantum computer, once they are fully online and operational and at speed, not the stuff that we've heard about from Google or Microsoft or what's going on in some other countries, your encryption is worthless. It won't matter anymore. We talked about how fast GPUs can get through encryption today, and we're talking bananas and military grade weapons. That's what we're talking about in difference between today's computing and quantum computing. Cowboy?
Yeah, I'll admit the quantum topic is not my favorite, strictly because you hit it. It is so different that you can't compare. Like, you really summed it up. True quantum computing kills everything we know today. Period. Dot. Forget it. Get rid of it. With quantum computing comes quantum encryption, and it's a whole nother ball game. And as you said, you got to get ahead of it. It's coming. We said it 10 years ago about AI, right? AI is coming. Get ready. Did anyone listen?
No.
Maybe a few. Not many. Not enough, right? So
Definitely
we're trying
not.
to do that for quantum. Like, hey, AI's here. Quantum's coming. Please
So
get ready.
the thing that scares me the most about moving into a reality where quantum computers are usable, like actually feasibly usable to do any sort of operating at capacity, the shift from what we have in computing architecture today to quantum computing is going to be a have and have not scenario. And I mean, those that are able to develop and operationalize their quantum computers are going to be, it's not even years, it's not decades, it's like millennia ahead of the other technology. And I might be, exaggerating that slightly, but anything you have in front of you that you are either watching or listening, and we thank you across all the platforms for when you do that, to this podcast will be inherently obsolete. It would be like living in the Stone Age compared to where we are. And anything, even the fastest computer you can buy today is an obsolete relic the moment quantum computing is operationalized. That's the night and day difference. And it's going to happen. When it happens, it will happen almost instantly. And it's going to be earth shaking in compute. It's going to be frightening. I think it's going to be more frightening than AI, quite honestly.
It's going to make AI look like child play. Like
Yeah.
I don't even know how the home user can prepare themselves, to be honest. Like, I don't know how to prepare myself against quantum computing in my home system.
I, I,
I,
Cowboy, there isn't a way. You get a
yeah,
quantum computer. That's how you do it. Your quantum compute. You will need a quantum computer that is the gateway into your infrastructure before you can even touch anything else behind it. The quantum computer will have to be what is the brains of the quote unquote firewall for your house.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
everything behind it, you can take a little bit extra time to spend the capital to upgrade. That's what we're talking. Like it's gonna be horrific. It's really gonna be bad for everybody.
I need to order paper checks. Don't
Yeah.
get ready. Goodbye, online banking.
Print out your important documents, put them in a fireproof safe.
Yep.
Okay. Our last story for the week: healthcare sector faces cybersecurity challenges. This is something I have talked about this since before COVID. So this is not a topic unfamiliar to me. A recent cybersecurity attack on the Kettering Health organization affected thousands of patients, exposing sensitive medical information. The incident underscores the vulnerabilities in the healthcare sector, which often lacks robust security measures. Healthcare organizations must prioritize data protection by adopting HIPAA-compliant practices and investing in advanced threat detection tools. So, healthcare has always been an industry that is in this weird mutated space of being on the cutting edge of medical science and technology and still running a Windows 95 computer for patient information. It's just kind of ridiculous to me.
I mean, willing to bet their boards aren't involved in their cybersecurity matters, right?
I would put them in the 60% category almost exclusively, with a few exceptions. Yes.
Yeah. As we said, there's been enough attacks now on hospitals and shutting down services that hopefully they're starting to wake up. But again, I think it's a big culture shift. It's hard. My opinion, Cyber Cowboy's opinion, is that it's still hard for doctors, board members to want to accept focusing money away from the medical technology and advancements to up their cybersecurity. But someone's got to go in there and be like, well, look, your amazing health technology is not going to work when the ransomware hits. So make a
Just looking
choice.
at a little bit more on the story, right? How many times have we heard this? Phones didn't work at Kettering Health. Patients had their appointments canceled, and some surgeries had to be canceled because of the cyber attack. Over and over and over, this is happening. It's sad. That's all I could say. They have a whole in the article. Their spokesman has a whole thing on how their teams are working around the clock to restore the standard stuff. At this point, it
Blah
shouldn't
blah
be.
blah.
It shouldn't be happening. Not at this level. Not at these type of organizations. Not for this critical infrastructure where life is literally impacted in a solid and direct way.
We're
It's
so
just
lucky no one has died because they're in the middle of or had to cancel life-saving surgery.
right.
Like I don't think it's happened, and I'm thankful for that. But that's going to be a massive
That
lawsuit.
so for where I sit, that is not a matter of if that's going to happen. We have very much like a Carrington event, solar flare. It's not a matter of if it's going to happen. It's a matter of when, and that's kind of terrifying to think about. So
It is, but
please
as
up your
always,
game in
that's
healthcare.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. No, it's part of doing podcasting, right? Yeah, I don't want to see the major life threatening reason people change now.
Yes, I agree with you. All right, Cowboy, you got anything else for everybody?
I do. To close out, in the cyber seas, it's not the storms that you see; it's the silent malware below the waterline that sinks the ships. Stay vigilant, captains. And for my cyber crowd out there, as always, stay frosty. I'm Cyber Cowboy.
And I'm your professor of CyberRisk. That's all we have for the news this week, and we'll see you next time. If you like this podcast, share it with your colleagues and friends. Your support is how we are able to continue to make this content. Thank you.